Hi guys. So my last post was about my first channeling attempt, and I used it to talk about fear and being able to move beyond fear and into a state of love. And the reason that I decided to share this whole journey with you guys is because when my journey first started, I was looking for people who were newly going through the experiences that I was going through. And the reason I was looking for those people was because those who had been in this space exploring this spiritual stuff for so long spoke from that level of knowing already what needs to be done. And there weren't any people who were really talking about the tiny little things, the little moments and the little steps that we take between each moment of our journey. And I started sharing these little moments of my own to provide that information also as an outlet for me, and also as an opportunity for others who are feeling ready to start sharing their journey to do the same. So I shared my first channeling attempt, and it was a very, very vulnerable share. Also because I know there's a lot of stigma around some of these spiritual practices, and that's mostly because people don't understand them. There is a lot of fear that's generated around them. And so I want to take this video as an opportunity to bring or shed some light on how to keep yourself safe when you do these practices. For those who are interested and ready to explore these things, there is no need to hold the vibration of fear. But there is a need to understand why not. So here we go. So what is the importance of raising our vibration when we do these deep spiritual practices? So basically, like attracts like, right? And if like attracts like, that means that whatever vibration I am on, we'll get more into understanding vibration and how to kind of see it and recognizing it in ourselves in a moment. So whatever vibration I am on, I will attract something that is on the same vibration. So if I'm on this vibration, I cannot attract something that is of a much higher vibration. We cannot align. If I am at a really high vibration, I cannot attract something that is at a really low vibration. I can't make one hand go fast and the other go slow. Okay, so with knowing that, understanding that from the perspective of our emotions, each of our emotions vibrates at a certain frequency. And so that is maybe the clearest way or the quickest way that we can determine whether we will be attracting positive experiences or negative experiences, or what we deem to be positive or negative. So this also plays out in our 3D reality. It just plays out faster in the spiritual realm because the vibration is much higher, meaning that things can come to us much more quickly. So as we as physical beings raise our vibration, we allow things to manifest into our lives much more quickly than they would if our vibration was low. However, if our vibration is low, we are still attracting things into our lives that are at a low frequency. Excuse me. So basically, how we create our reality this way is that whatever it is that we're wanting to attract into our lives, we can consciously decide to put ourselves in alignment vibrationally with that thing. This is how the law of attraction works. And for those of us who are just maybe more in the states of surrender, or wanting to kind of follow the path of whatever our soul's journey is, or whatever that deeper state of co-creation that's wanting to come through is we go into a state of surrender and just basically completely raise our vibration as much as we can, so that whatever comes through us and into our lives, whatever we attract or manifest into our lives, will be something of a high frequency, no matter what it is. And that's where the whole surrender thing comes in. But not everybody wants to practice from the state of deep surrender and allowing that journey to just manifest and happen naturally. Some of us want to create it from a conscious perspective of deciding that, for example, I want to have this material thing or this experience, whatever it is, and then we will do the practice of aligning our vibration with the thing that we're wanting to experience in order to bring that thing into our lives. So when we are in or exploring anything in the spiritual realm, like astral projection, for example, or channeling, we want to make sure that our vibration is as high as possible. And the reason for that is, if I go into the spiritual realm, into the astral realm through astral projection with a low vibration, I'm going to attract things very quickly that are of that frequency. And I don't want those experiences. I'll give you an example. The first night that I astral projected at the beginning of this year, and this was consciously, intentionally deciding to leave my body. It had happened before when I was in high school, but I didn't understand it at that time, and it was completely spontaneous. But at this time, the vibration started spontaneously, and then I consciously decided to leave my body. So at that time, my vibration was really high, and I wasn't really afraid of it. I had laid most of my fear down. I was really open and just in a state of peace and love and bliss for most of the days. And I had a really beautiful, positive experience, which admittedly, there were moments of like fear because of the unknown, but having to consciously pinpoint that fear and release it intentionally in order to continue to have a positive experience was the fastest training that I can think of to release any kind of negative emotion. Because you know that if you are in a negative mind frame and a negative emotional state particularly, you will attract things of a similar state. And you don't want that. When you're in this life, when you're in the astral realms, when you're channeling, you don't want that. So it is so important to gain control over your thoughts during these practices. So on the second day of my astral projection experience, it happened again spontaneously. I didn't want to project that day because I had had a bad day with my studies, and I was still studying my Master of Education at that time, and it was very challenging because through the awakening process, I was going through a lot of changes in my brain. So I was forming a lot of new neural pathways, and old pathways were breaking down quickly. So my memory was not really good. It was really, really difficult at that time to focus on things that were really easy to focus on before. The only thing that I was able to really focus on was the awakening process and my experiences and learning what they meant. So on that second night, I had decided I don't want to project because I know about vibration. And it was so persistent. It just kept, the vibrations would not let up. So I decided to project. And when I projected, I was so incredibly dizzy. I knew I was in my room. I could vaguely see around, but I was just so disoriented and so uncomfortable, so dizzy. And I immediately said to myself, I knew this was a bad idea. I shouldn't have projected. And it ended up being a really uncomfortable experience. Immediately, I decided back to my body, and I floated back into my body. And that is another thing to bring our attention to how things happen really quickly in the spiritual realm, and particularly when we're vibrating at a high frequency, is that what I think comes into my existence almost instantaneously when I'm astral projecting. If I think Egypt, I will be in Egypt. If I think back to my body, or I just think about my body, immediately back into my body. There is no time, there is no space that passes between the thought and the action. It happens almost instantaneously. And this is also the best training ground for this physical reality, is because the same thing happens in this physical reality, it just happens more slowly. So what I think, I end up feeling, and what I feel, particularly if I think the thought over and over again. I'm going to go to the boyfriend example. This is maybe one of the more common ones. he's not answering my texts. Okay, so he's not answering my texts. I wonder why he's not answering my texts. He must be with somebody else, or he must be speaking to somebody else, or he just doesn't care about me, or just, and the thoughts just go on and they build and they build and they build, and then eventually the emotions start to build around the thought. And the emotions are so powerful, they start to send that vibration out at an even higher frequency, or or a faster rate, or just a more intensified rate than if it was just the thought solely on its own. And that frequency, whatever vibration it is on, is what then attracts the same frequency. And this is how we end up becoming the masters of our own reality. Masters when we learn how to actually do this work intentionally, when we learn how to create the experience that we want intentionally. So I'm just going to show you a little chart quickly on what on each of our emotions and where they vibrate at the chart. I have posted it way down on my Instagram, but I think that I will repost again in the next post, in a future post, so that you can have access to that. But if you look at the chart, right at the bottom of the chart is shame, and then guilt and fear, and it moves up through anger, through eventually up to neutrality, and then acceptance, love, joy, peace, and then enlightenment. And how I used this chart when I had just begun my studies into vibration was that whenever I would find myself vibrating at a lower frequency, or rather, whenever I would find myself feeling an emotion such as fear, or feeling guilt, or feeling shame, or feeling anger, or desire, or anything that took me out of the present moment, I would immediately come back to the chart, look at the chart. Where am I currently on this chart? I'm vibrating at this rate. I don't want to vibrate at this rate, because I know if I'm vibrating at this rate, I'm going to attract things into my life that vibrate at a similar rate. And I've had enough of that. I'm ready for a new experience. And so that ultimately means I have to take charge of my thought process the emotions that my thoughts send out, and of what I am attracting into my space, into my experience of reality. And so understanding this, and then taking this knowledge into doing deeper practices like astral projection, like lucid dreaming, like channeling, you're only going to attract into your space what you allow yourself to attract into your space. If you do not have space vibrationally for a certain thing to come through during these practices, you will not attract them into your space. And so the fear can be removed from, for example, what entity I would be channeling. So for me, going into this, I knew that before I even begin the practice of channeling, I need to raise my vibration. Before I practice astral projection, I need to raise my vibration. I need to get my head in the right state, so that my emotions are in the right state, so that whatever I bring is the experience that I want to have, and not something that's going to scare the living hell out of me, and then have me sharing how we shouldn't do these things because they're so dangerous. And I honestly think that most people who do speak from that perspective are speaking very seldom from an experiential perspective. They're speaking from fear that has been passed down for many reasons. Maybe some have had negative experiences, maybe for the purpose of controlling the path that we take. Because if we ultimately decide to do these practices on our own, to actually explore who we are at the deepest levels of our mind, of our physical bodies, of our spiritual existence, of our energetic experiences, when we start to understand ourselves at such a deep level, we cannot help but understand the nature of reality. We cannot help but see fact from fiction. We cannot help but see those who are serving and helping our development and our growth, and those who are intentionally slowing it down. who wants that? Particularly at higher levels. I'm not going to get into that. There is a lot of discussion in that region, and I tend to not myself dive too deeply into it. I like to understand all perspectives, but I choose to focus on the positive. I choose to focus on my personal expansion in consciousness, expansion in my human experience, expansion in my spiritual experience, expansion in love, expansion in openness, just expansion in general. When we start to kind of contract and move inward, things begin to feel really difficult and really small and really challenging because of that narrow pointedness, because we cannot see the whole, because we're so closely associated with the experience that we cannot see the purpose or the point of it in the larger scheme of things. So on that note, I am going to close this video off. It's a good 16 minutes. I hope this was informative and helpful for you, and that you don't shy away from these deep spiritual practices because of fear, because your teachers or because your priests or your church or your government or your whoever, your friends, your family, tell you not to do so because of fear, and because they're coming from a state of unknowing. They're coming from a state of fear of the unknown ultimately. And that if you do choose to explore these things, you do so consciously, you do so from a state of knowledge and understanding for how they work, so that you continue to have positive experiences. I wish you all the best on your journey, and I will post the chart in my next video, or rather in my next post. Have a beautiful, beautiful weekend, and see you guys soon.